June 6, 1944. The world holds its breath as Allied forces surge toward Normandy's beaches. But in a quiet room overlooking the restless English Channel, General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands alone, his silhouette outlined by the pale light of dawn. The clamor of war is distant, almost irrelevant to what weighs on his mind. While the world's attention burns on the fight ahead, Eisenhower's thoughts are locked on something darker, something lurking beyond victory.
He paces, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for an answer. The largest invasion in human history has begun, yet his mind races ahead, skipping past the beaches, past the anticipated triumph. He can already see the war's end, but what he sees chills him. He knows the Nazis won't surrender like honorable foes. They'll disappear, dissolve into the shadows, taking their horrors with them. If that happens, the truth will vanish too. 3 months pass. Paris falls, and the Allied armies steamroll through France, pushing the enemy back with relentless force. But soon, the soldiers find something they could never have anticipated. In the woods near Ordruff, they stumble upon a sight that halts them in their tracks. The first concentration camp liberated by Americans. The air is thick with the stench of death.
Bodies are stacked like firewood. Survivors are little more than skin and bone, their eyes hollowed by suffering. Some soldiers vomit, others weep, and a few refuse to believe what's in front of them. Eisenhower receives the report. He reads every word with a cold, methodical intensity. Then he gives an order that startles his staff. Bring cameras, bring journalists, and bring civilians from every nearby town. Capture everything. Some of his officers think he's lost his mind. Why waste precious resources on documentation when Berlin is still unconquered? But Eisenhower's reply is chilling, because in 20 years, people will say this never happened. On April 12, 1945, Eisenhower steps into Ohrdruf himself. He walks through every building, his face set like stone. He forces himself to witness every horror, to confront every survivor and every corpse. His generals follow, even the famously unshakable Patton is overcome and runs outside to vomit. Eisenhower doesn't flinch. He stands silent, absorbing the scene, calculating what must be done. He sees the bigger picture. The architects of this horror are already slipping away. Hitler's inner circle is scattering like insects exposed to the light. Himmler shaves off his mustache and blends in with retreating soldiers. Göring flees south with stolen treasures. Eichmann disappears into Austria with forged papers. Mongola vanishes into the night. Eisenhower realizes with mounting dread, no one is actually hunting them. The Allies are fixated on Berlin. The Soviets are consumed by vengeance. The net to catch these monsters does not exist. Determined, Eisenhower takes drastic action. He sends urgent cables to Washington, London, and Moscow. We need trials. We need accountability. We need to preserve the truth. The responses he gets are cold, dismissive, even mocking. But Eisenhower ignores them all. In the shadows, he begins building something new, a secret team of investigators. An unprecedented documentation project. A list of names that must not escape justice. And as the world lurches toward the war's end, Eisenhower's private battle to ensure the truth outlives the darkness has just begun. April 1945. The world outside is celebrating, but Eisenhower's war is only deepening. As Allied troops liberate more camps, the full, unimaginable scale of the Nazi horror is revealed. Each report is worse than the last. The documentation team, acting on Eisenhower's strict orders, records everything, every body, every broken life, every ledger and photograph the Nazis left behind. The evidence is overwhelming, impossible to ignore. But Eisenhower isn't finished. He drags civilians from nearby German towns into the camps, forcing them to walk past rows of corpses, to stare at the ovens and the gas chambers. "Look," he commands. "See what was done in your name?" Some cry, some protest ignorance. But Eisenhower is unmoved. "Now you know," he tells them. "Now the world will know." Yet, even as the truth is being captured in film and memory, the architects of evil are on the run. Hitler's closest men, Himmler, Göring, Eichmann, Mengele, scatter across shattered Europe like ghosts. Himmler shaves his mustache and slips into the chaos, masquerading as an ordinary soldier. Göring flees south in a convoy, his trucks weighed down with stolen art and morphine. Mengele, the angel of death, dons a stolen uniform and disappears into the black woods. Eisenhower senses the danger. The world is focused on victory, but no one is hunting these men. The Allies are racing for Berlin. The Soviets are obsessed with revenge, and the net to catch the guilty is full of holes. Eisenhower's warning cables to Washington, London, and Moscow are met with shrugs or scorn. Churchill dismisses the urgency. Stalin scoffs, "Just shoot them." But Eisenhower refuses to let the monsters vanish without a trace. In secret, he assembles a team of investigators, translators, documentarians. Their mission: build a case that can withstand the scrutiny of history. Every camp is to be filmed. Every register, every testimony, every shred of evidence is to be collected, catalogued, preserved. The list of names grows. Men who must not be allowed to slip away, who must answer for what has been uncovered. Then, on May 8, 1945, Germany surrenders. The world erupts in relief V-Day. The war in Europe is over. But for Eisenhower, the true battle is just beginning. News arrives. British soldiers have captured Himmler at a checkpoint. He's disguised, carrying forged papers, looking like any other defeated soul. But a sharp-eyed sergeant notices his nervousness, his refusal to make eye contact. They search him, find a cyanide capsule sewn into his clothes, and remove it. But Himmler is clever. During interrogation, he bites down on a second hidden capsule. Within minutes, he is dead. His last words haunt the room. "I am Heinrich Himmler." When Eisenhower is told, he falls silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. One of history's worst mass murderers has slipped through their fingers, lost to justice. Eisenhower's resolve hardens. "This will not happen again," he declares. Orders change. Every high-value Nazi captured from now on is stripped, searched, watched constantly. No more mistakes. Göring is next, found in Bavaria, dressed in a custom Luftwaffe uniform, medals gleaming. He expects to be treated like a statesman, to negotiate. Instead, he is humiliated, stripped, shaved, every pocket and cavity checked. They find jewels, drugs, and yet another vial of poison. "You are a criminal," an American colonel tells him. For the first time, Göring is powerless. He breaks shaking, begging for morphine, a ghost of his former self. But Eisenhower isn't satisfied. So many have already escaped. The hunt must continue, and as the world returns to peace, Eisenhower prepares for a confrontation, unlike any in history, a public reckoning, where the truth will be undeniable, and evil will have nowhere left to hide. The war is over. The guns have fallen silent across Europe, but for Eisenhower, the shadows remain thick, and the true reckoning has only begun. The Allies have won the battlefield, but the battle for justice, real, lasting justice, looms ahead, fraught with doubt, politics, and danger. In the ruined cities, in the forests, and the mountains, the ghosts of the Nazi regime are still at large. Some, like Göring, are locked away in Allied cells, stripped of their power, their arrogance, replaced by a hollow desperation. Others have vanished into the chaos, their faces and names lost in a tide of refugees and forged documents. Bormann is already a ghost, Eichmann slips silently into the shadows of Austria. Mengele plans an escape to South America. The list of the missing grows, and with it, Eisenhower's urgency. He knows the world is weary of, war-hungry to move on to forget. But Eisenhower cannot forget. He cannot allow the world to close its eyes. Not now, not ever. Night after night, he pores over reports from his secret team of investigators. They have become hunters tracking, cataloging, building a dossier of evil. Every liberated camp is documented down to the smallest detail. The gas chambers, the crematoria, the ledgers, the testimony of survivors whose broken voices are preserved on film and paper. But the resistance is everywhere. Washington is cold, Churchill is skeptical, and Stalin mocks the very idea of justice. Shoot them all, but Eisenhower is relentless. He pushes for something unprecedented, a public trial, a place where the evidence will be aired before the world, where the guilty cannot claim ignorance or twist the truth in the shadows. His reasoning is simple, yet chilling. If we execute them in secret, we become them. If we hide the evidence, the next generation will doubt it ever happened. This must be public, he insists. This must be undeniable. The planning is painstaking and fraught with tension. Even Eisenhower's own allies question the cost, the risk, the purpose. But Eisenhower's conviction is unyielding. He knows that justice isn't just for the present, it's for the future, for history, for the memory of every innocent life lost in the camps. Finally, on November 20th, 1945, in a battered courthouse in Nuremberg, the world's eyes turn to a trial unlike any before. 24 of the most powerful men of the Nazi regime sit in the dock, stripped of their medals, their uniforms, their power. The evidence assembled by Eisenhower's team is overwhelming. Thousands of documents, reels of film, eyewitness accounts from the survivors and the perpetrators themselves. The trial becomes a theater of horror and truth. For months, footage of the camps flickers on the screens, mountains of bodies, the faces of children, the empty shoes at Mudnik, the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Survivors testify through tears, their words searing the silence of the courtroom. Documents are read out, signed by the very men now cowering before the judges. The world cannot look away. Gring tries to command the stage, mocking the prosecutors, twisting words, claiming he was only a patriot. But then the films roll. The evidence is undeniable, and for once, Gring falls silent. The arrogance that once defined him evaporates under the weight of truth. He becomes a broken man, exposed before the world, his legacy forever tied to the horrors he helped engineer. The trial lasts 10 months. Every session is recorded, every word transcribed, every piece of evidence catalogued. The process is slow, methodical, and merciless. There are no easy answers, no comfortable conclusions. 12 men are sentenced to hang, their crimes echoing in the somber halls of justice. But even now, darkness finds a way to slip through the cracks. Just hours before the executions, Gring is found dead in his cell, cyanide, smuggled in despite every precaution. His final act is one of defiance, a last bitter escape from justice. Eisenhower is furious, but he doesn't let it derail what must be done. The remaining sentences are carried out. The bodies are photographed, cremated, and the ashes scattered in secret, so that there will be no graves, no shrines, no place for future evil to rally. Yet, as Eisenhower watches the final reports come in, he knows the work is incomplete. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of the guilty have melted away into new lives. Some in South America, some in the Middle East, some even in the United States. The perfect justice he dreamed of is impossible, but something unprecedented has been achieved. For the first time in history, national leaders are held accountable for crimes against humanity. For the first time, the world sees. Following orders is not a defense. Genocide has a name, and it is a crime that cannot be erased. Eisenhower's battle for the truth, for memory, is not over. The evidence meticulously gathered and preserved will stand long after the last witness has died. And when the deniers come, as Eisenhower always feared they would, the truth will be waiting undeniable, unshakable. The echoes of the Nuremberg trials ripple across the world, but for Eisenhower, the fight for truth is far from over. He understands something that few others do. Memory is fragile, and lies are persistent. Even as the ashes of the condemned Nazis are scattered in secret, he knows that the seeds of denial have already begun to sprout. There are whispers, quiet at first, then louder, questioning the scale, the reality, even the existence of the horrors uncovered in the camps. Eisenhower had predicted this moment years before. In that lonely room facing the English Channel, he had seen it coming in the haunted eyes of survivors, in the broken bodies stacked in the shadowy barracks of Ohrdruf. He had seen it in the cold responses from leaders who didn't want to face the monstrous truth. That is why he was relentless about documentation. That is why he forced the world to look, because he knew that someday someone would try to look away. Now, years after the war, the evidence stands like a fortress against the rising tide of denial. 75,000 feet of film, millions of pages of sworn testimony, photographs, signatures, artifacts, and the chilling silent faces of those who survived. The evidence is everywhere, in archives, in libraries, in the hands of historians and documentarians. It is undeniable. It is unshakable. Still, Eisenhower cannot rest. The world moves on, as it always does. The Cold War begins. Lines are drawn. Old enemies become new allies, and the fate of the lost Nazis drifts into the fog of history. Some slip away to distant continents, changing names, building new lives. A few are hunted down. Eichmann, for example, is captured in Argentina years later, hauled before a court where the cameras roll, and the world is forced to remember once more. But most are never found. They live out their days in obscurity, shadows among the living. Eisenhower knows this. He knows that perfect justice is a myth. But he also knows that history remembers what is recorded, and that the greatest weapon against denial is the evidence itself. When the deniers finally come, decades later, they find the doors barred. Every claim, every whispered lie, smashes against the wall of proof Eisenhower built. Survivors speak. Footage plays. Names are read. Allowed victims and perpetrators alike. The world cannot look away. Not now, not ever. And in the quiet, Eisenhower's own words echo, "The things I saw beggar description." The visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. I made the visit deliberately, in order to be in a position to give first-hand evidence of these things. If ever, in the future, there develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda. He was right. The deniers came, and the evidence stood. Not because the world was perfect, not because every guilty person was punished, but because one man refused to let the world look away. In preserving the truth, Eisenhower preserved the memory of an entire generation lost to horror. And when the final whisper of it never happened drifts through time, the ghosts of Ohrdruf and Auschwitz stand ready, armed with footage, testimony, and evidence that will outlive us all. In the end, Eisenhower didn't just win a war. He built a legacy of remembrance, a shield against forgetting, so that the truth would never die and the world would never again have the excuse of not knowing.